Hello, friends, and welcome back to ABN's Trinity channel for another episode of Colliding Worldviews. We're so thankful for everyone tuning in for this entire year of great shows of Colliding Worldviews. And if you did not hear, we are right now in the midst of a 7-week end-of-the-year special series with Dr. J. Smith. Today is part 6 of 7, but in case you missed any of the last shows, which are available on the Trinity channel's YouTube channel, on my Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/Tony Goulet, and also Fander Films. That's Pfander Films, and that is on YouTube as well. It's Dr. J. Smith's YouTube channel. But the episodes that we've already done in this 7-week series are: why are there 2 compilations of the Quran? What has happened to the 9 earliest manuscripts? And of course, that was based on the first week, but really we asked, where are the 6? And we're still waiting for 1, really, but we couldn't find those 6. And then we talked about and asked and answered the question, why are there 4 Islamic Qiblas? And then on the week after that, we did, what is the Andalusian problem? We talked about the myth of the Andalusian paradise with Dr. Daniel Janosic. And now we are in the 6th week, but last week we talked about the hidden Islamic slave trade and colorism, a devastating show on the history of Islamic slavery. And of course, that is still going on today. Now, today we have Dr. J. Smith back once again, and we're asking, why have we found 31 different Korans? A little while back, it was around 26. Now there's already 5 more, and we don't know how many more there are to come. It will definitely be interesting. But Dr. J. Smith, welcome back to ABN's Trinity channel once again for another episode of Colliding Worldviews.
Tony, it's so good to be back. It's been terrific doing these first 6 with you, and we have yet one more to go, next week. When we bring it all together, we're going to take all these 6 areas, these historical problems, and we'll be bringing it together in one last show next week.
It's very exciting, and we've had a lot of viewers. We've had thousands and thousands of views on the different sites where we have posted these videos. A lot of people are loving them. It's equipping a lot of people. It's of course discouraging to a lot of Muslims who have all their false hope in a lie, the false belief system, the religio-political system of Islam. And of course, many Muslims are leaving Islam because of hearing the gospel from Christians, because Jesus is visiting them in dreams, of course, because of archaeological and historical evidence that is destroying the Islamic worldview, the traditional Islamic worldview. And of course, all of these are giving more information about all of that stuff that a lot of people don't know about. So everyone needs to know this information, Christians and non. So please continue to share these videos with everyone else. Dr. Smith, what can people expect to get in this next hour that we're going to be together today?
Well, this next hour is brand new material. Now, you might say, hold on a minute. Everything we've been doing has been brand new. But this next hour especially, we're now going to delve into material that's just coming to the fore in just the last 2 years. In fact, as you just noted, we used to say 26 Arabic Qur'ans. That has now jumped to 31 in just the last 2 months. Now let's unpack and let's talk about what we're saying. If we look at slide number 2, when you look at it, these are the claims that Muslims make. And for those of you who are following on with our slide presentation, those of you who have it in front of you, these are the claims they make. Every Arabic Quran, Muslims say, all over the world, doesn't matter where they are. This one right here, this one I have in my hand right now, this is the canonical text. Every Quran, they say, all over the world is exactly the same. That means every surah, every ayah, every sentence, every word, even some say every diacritical mark, every dot below and above the line, every vowelization, that's the dhamma, the kasra, and the fatha. These are the 3 vowels, the u, the ah, the e, the sounds that you need to understand the words. We'll get into that more as we move on today. But all of the Qurans, every one of them around the world, are exactly the same. It has never changed, and it has never been altered in 1400 years. Now, let's back up and let's go to slide number 4, because in slide number 4, we're going to remember back 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that there were two compilations of the Quran. It was the very first program we went into. And we mentioned, Tony, that at that time, at the time of Uthman in 650s, really around 652, after Uthman had destroyed, burnt all the variety of Qurans that existed at that time, he made one last canonical text, and then he sent it out to every province. And we were quoting Al-Bukhari, volume 6, hadith number 509 and 510. And we wanted to know what were the provinces, and we found out that there were 9. They're listed right there on that slide. You can read them: Basra, Baghdad, Damascus, Jerusalem, Cairo, Alexandria, Aden, Herat, and Nishapur. These are the 9 cities. These are the 9 provinces that this one Quran, the canonical Quran, created by, well, his name was Uthman, the 3rd caliph, but it was really written by a man named Zaid ibn Thabit, along with 3 others, Zubair, Alas, and Hari. The 4 of them created this final recension, this final Quran. They sent it out to every province, to those 9 cities. So we do know that every one of those Qurans went with them where there was a reader, a reciter. And if you go to the next slide, slide number 5, these are the 5 different major cities that had reciters go to them: Syria, Kufa, Medina, Mecca, and Basra. And those are the names of the reciters. These were men, these were scholars that went with each one of these compilations, each one of these codices, to make sure that the people, when they recited it, when they spoke it out loud, that they got it correct. Which means that there was no other way to recite it but this one way. And we do know, and when we looked at Al-Bukhari, it said very clearly that they must do it in the Qurayshi dialect. That means there's only one dialectic form at that time. Now, this is the history that we've grown up with. This is the history that I've always heard, and this is the history that we're going to look at. Now, what I want you to do is I want to go to slide number 6. Take a look at slide number 6, because here we're now going to show a picture of 26 different Qurans. Take a look at those 26 different Qurans. Now, what's fascinating, those are the Qurans that Hatun Tash. Hatun Tash is a colleague of mine. She is in London. If you go up on DCCI, that's Defending Christ, Critiquing Islam YouTube channel, you will see she's every Sunday at Speaker's Corner. She is the one that's done the work of finding and looking for Qurans today. And these are, there are 26 in this picture here. She has now found another 5. She's going to have to add 5 more to this collection. There are other people around the world who are also collecting Qurans. We know that in Australia, in Melbourne, they've collected 17 different Qurans. I don't know of anybody yet that has found this many. Hatun has done a great job. She's gone to Morocco. She's gone to Yemen. She's gone to Jordan. She's gone to existing countries. She's gone to marketplaces in those countries. Now, she didn't go physically there. She sent other people, but she went. So they went with the names of the different Qurans that they were to look for. And this is her collection that she now has. Every one of those Qurans that you're looking at in that picture there are different. These are not translations. Tony, look, let me make this very clear. We're not talking about translations. These are not other languages, which of course would be different. We're not talking about English translations or Urdu translations or Bengali translations. We're talking about Arabic. These are Arabic Qurans. There are 31 in that picture. We are expecting to find possibly another 6 because, and you will see why. Look at when we go down, and I want you to go down to, well, before we get to that, let's talk about what we're talking about here. What is it we're referring to here? Now, Tony, off the top of your head, how and why would this be damaging, do you think?
Well, right before you just said that, made that last comment, what I was actually thinking in trying to give Islam the benefit of the doubt here is that I know from the study that I've had, you know, many Muslims will say, well, if you have a Quran in English or in Chinese or in Russian or whatever, well, that's not the Quran, this is a translation of it. So they say that you really need to read the Quran in Arabic to have the true Quran. And that already kind of cleared it up for our audience when he said, hey, these are not different translations in different languages. These are all Arabic. And the Arabic Quran is supposedly the unchanged, perfect, compiled within 20 years of Muhammad's life, roughly, with no errors, no changes. And if it's in Arabic, then there should not be any other than one, definitely not 26 here, or, of course, definitely not 31.
Yeah. Now remember, in the Quran itself, it makes this claim very clearly that Allah has revealed the Quran in the Arabic language for the Arabic people. So, because they are the unscriptured people. Surah 7, Ayah 157, Surah 62, Ayah 2 talks about the unscriptured people. Now, many people would like to say that's the unlettered prophet or the illiterate prophet. That's not what the word means. It's very clear that this is unscriptured. They needed a scripture in their language, and that's why the Quran was revealed in Arabic for the Arabic-speaking people. We're not talking about translations here. There would be thousands and thousands of translations. We're talking only about the Arabic Quran. If you go back to that picture number 6, slide number 6, you will see those are all Arabic. Not one of them is another language. This is so devastating. And why it's so devastating, Tony, is it because no Muslim in the world has ever heard this before. This is not what this is not the narrative they've been told. This is not the narrative they've grown up with. When we took these Qurans down to Speaker's Corner, about a year and a half ago now, it's been over a year that we've taken them down, and we held them up there at Speaker's Corner. The furore. You can go up on Fander Films and look at the video. We filmed the whole episode. Look at the anger of the Muslims. They were so angry. At one point in the video, you will see a Muslim come right in and demand all the Muslims to leave, not to hear us, not to look at us, because they couldn't get the Qurans from our hands. And they were telling him, do not listen to this. Do not listen to this. This is not good for you. You must not listen to this. So back in July of this year, then, we went and did it a second time. We went and showed the Qurans a second time. And this time, we almost didn't leave the corner. You can go up and look at that video, because then we showed it. And there's two different videos, one from 2016 and one from 2017. When we held up these 26 Qurans in 2017, these young Muslim men were ordered to try to grab them from us. And you can see on the video as they're trying to grab them out of our bag, putting their bodies in the way so we could not leave the corner, because they were so incensed, so angered, because they had never heard this before. They have never been told that there were different Qurans, that the Arabic Quran could be different. And not just one or two differences. 26 at that time. Now today it's up to 31. We should get another 6. Probably it'll be 37 before we end. But let's go. And this is what the Muslims are coming back with. And this is what they're saying. This is nothing more than ahruf. Now let's go to slide number 8, because on slide number 8, let's define terms. Because here you can see where the terms are. Now, ahruf. According to the dictionary, the different ways the Quran is actually read, like a dialect. And there supposedly are 7 ahruf, 7 different readings of the Quran. Muhammad himself said this. In fact, there is a tradition that refers to the fact that when one man heard it, another man jumped on him and grabbed him to Muhammad and says, what are you going to do with this guy? How dare he read it differently than the way I've heard you recite it to us? And Muhammad responds and says, no, there are 7 different readings of the Quran. So that's at the time of Muhammad. There are 7 different readings. The qira'at is the other word we're going to look at, which means literally the readings or the method of recitation. Traditionally, there are 10 recognized schools of qira'at in Islam today. Now, each school derives its name from a famous reader of the Quranic recitation. So that's what Muslims say. That's all this is, Mr. Smith. Don't get upset about it. We've known about these. We've known about the ahruf. We've known about a qira'at. It's just the different ways of reading the same text. The difficulty is we're going to find that this is not just the different ways of reading. What we do know is, and we said this and we talked about this in the second week, we may have referred this in the first week, when you look at the Quranic text, when you look at the Arabic text, and we're going to see this a little bit later, so I don't want to pull our thunder too much till we get to that. The text, the Arabic text is only written in consonantal form. There is no dhamma, the u sound, or the fatha, the a sound, or the kasra, which is the e sound. That doesn't exist in the earliest scripts. They didn't have that. And that's why many of your newspapers, when they're printed in Cairo, so they can be sold all over the Arab-speaking world today, do not have the Dhamma, the Qasr, and the Fatah, so that anybody, anywhere, any Arab can read it and put in their own dialectic differences. But those vowelizations were only introduced in the 8th and 9th century, not in the 7th century. You wouldn't have had that variation. You wouldn't have had dialectic differences in a consonantal form in the 7th century. Now, the riwayah, there's the other word we're going to look at, a transmission line named after its primary narrator. These are reciters who have a line of recitation from master to student to master to student in variant forms, which are transmitted from him. The form of each of these recitations are referred to by the notable students of the master who recited them. And there supposedly are 20 of these riwayat. And then the other two words are turuk. This is the line of transmission, much like the riwayah. There are 80 of these turuks, and then the wuju. There are the turuk. These are also the wuju. Now, that's the, forget about all the Arabic words. They're just there to impress you, of course. But certainly we need to know what we're talking about here. And here's the problem. Look at the next slide. According to tradition, the ahruf, this is slide number 9. The ahruf are the various ways that the verses of the Quran are read. You can read that on your own time, but I want to go to slide number 10 because here's the difficulty. No one today knows what ahruf really means. We don't know what this means. Are these 7 different ways of pronouncing the same word without actually changing the spelling? Are ahruf 7 types of verses in the Quran? Are these ahruf the same as the qiraat? Let's look at the next slide. Do these 7 ahruf, slide number 11, do these 7 ahruf refer to 7 dialects of the Arabs in the 7th century, such as the Quraysh, the Hudayl, the Tamim, the Hawazin, the Thaqif, the Kinana in the Yemen? Are the 7 ahruf synonyms, different words with exact same meaning? See, here's the problem. Any way you look at it and any way you try to understand what ahruf mean, you're going to have problems, because the difficulty is that means that there is different ways of saying that, of different saying. But then how can you have these different dialectic forms if there's only one Quran? If there's only one Quran, unless, of course, these do change the meanings. And, of course, that's the million-dollar question. Most of the Muslims who have been hearing us do this, and the ones at Speaker's Corner, just were laughing out loud. You don't even know what you're talking about because you have no idea what ahruf means. And our response to them is, neither do you. No one really knows what ahruf means because we don't have any original Qurans to know what that consonantal text was. Now, that was the problem we came up with in week number 2. None of those manuscripts that we even have today go back to the 7th century. They only get introduced in the 8th century. Now, let's go to slide number 12, because here are some more damaging questions. Do the 7 different ahrufs refer to 7 different ways the verse can be changed, such as ordered or letter variations, etc.? And did Muhammad know all of the 7, or did he simply accept the other 6 later on? And which of the 7 was actually revealed to Muhammad by Jibril? So it's obvious that even the tradition suggests there's 7 different readings. But that was during the time of Muhammad. When Uthman came then in 652, he destroyed all the other Qurans. If they were just simply dialectical differences, then why would they need to be destroyed? Why would you need to destroy consonantal texts unless, of course, these are no beyond differences? This actually changes the meaning. What we need to be careful of here is, if this is so, if this does change the meaning, then this changed completely what Muslims have been trying to tell us for 1400 years. And we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. But Tony, from everything you've seen right now, the fact that the Muslims do admit that there are different ahrufs, that they are different qira'ats, these 7 readings only existed at the time of Muhammad. By the time Uthman comes into power, in the 3rd Caliph, in 652, he then eradicates, destroys all the evidence, destroys all the Qurans. That's very clear in Al-Bukhari, chapter 6, verse 510. We talked about that the first week especially. We also referred to it in the 2nd week. So there is no need now for any new ahruf, because now there's only one consonantal text, which what we're going to find out and ask is, where was that consonantal text changed? And what is it we're looking at today with the Qurans that we now have in our hands today? Now, let's go. I want to look at slide number 14. Before we go to the break, before we move into the much more damaging material, I want to look at this slide. I hope you look at the slide carefully, and let me unpack it for you. Look at the 7 readings there in the middle of that slide. Now take a look at the 5 cities that these manuscripts were initially sent to, and they include Mecca, Medina, Damascus, Kufa, and Basra. Those are the 5 major cities. We do know that they also went to 4 others, and those are Herat and Nishapur, Alexandria, and Jerusalem. But let's just look at those 5 right now, because these are the ones we do have, that we do are well referred to in the traditions. Look at the names of the reciters that went with it. Abdullah ibn Sa'b, Sa'id bin Tabi. Excuse me for my pronunciation for Arabic speakers. I know I'm not a great pronunciation of Arabic as an American. Al-Mughari ibn Shu'ab, and then Abu Abd al-Rahman as-Sulami in Kufa. Shu'ab was the reciter for Damascus. Thabit remained in Medina, and Sa'b was the reciter for Mecca. And then you have Amir ibn Abdul Qais, who is the reciter for Basra. Now, from him, then came the sub. But take a look at the dates there. 690. These are 680, 780, 670. Sorry. Going down to 607th century, and suddenly we jump to the late 8th century for the next group. The next group, there's about 100 years difference. 100 years? What happened in between? Where are all the names that should be in between? And then we get to their students on the far right. If you look at the far right, the number of students, there are 15 names there. If you look at those 15 names. So we have 5 cities, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different teachers, and then we have about 15 different students. Now, every time you see a cloud form, that little cloud, those brown little clouds, all right, if you can see that on that graph there, every one of those brown clouds has a number in them. Those numbers are the variants. Those are the variants within each one of those students' recitation of the Quran from the Quran that we have today. That means they are vary from the Quran that I have in my hand. And what is this Quran that I have in my hand? Now, this is the Quran that everybody uses all over the world. This is known as the Hafs text. Take a look at that black circle. The black circle on the right-hand side is circled around the name Hafs. That is the student who is been attributed. He is the one that all the Qurans that we get today comes from him. Look at the date he died, 805. That's the early 9th century. So every Quran that we're using today, this one right here included, that I'm showing you, this Quran comes from that man that's circled right there in black. Now, what about all the other men? What about the other 14 that are listed above and below him? And notice every one of them, take a look at how many variants they have from what he has. Okay, so just take a look. Let's look at the ones at the top. Al-Bazi, 1,000. I'm take my glasses off to see this. 1,094 differences.
1,094. Yeah. I want to let our viewers know in case they can't see.
Galu, 1,700 differences. Hisham, 1,347 differences. Look at Khalaf, 2,600 differences. Coming on to Abu al-Harith, 5,000 differences between his recitation and that of Hafs, who's circled in black. Look at Abu Bakr in Aish, 504. Al-Duri, 4,645. Now, hold on a minute. Take a look and you'll see Al-Duri's name also in the Kufa. That's the same Al-Duri. Both Al-Duri in Kufa and Al-Duri who is in Basra, it's the same man. But he had 2 different recitations from 2 different cities. There are 336 differences between his one in Kufa and that in the Hafs. And then when he goes to Basra and studies under another teacher, there's 4,000 differences, but then he disagrees with himself again and has 2,700 differences. This Al-Duri doesn't know what he's talking about. Sorry about that, but can you see? Even when you look at the names and you look at the dates, These are all 9th century. So these have been well known for over 1,000 years. For over 1,000 years, we've known about these transmitters. We've known about these students, and we do know how many variants. Now, Hatun Tash has done the work of looking at the variants. She's only had chance to look at 23 of the Quran so far. That's why it says 23 on that slide, number 14. And she has found a total of 59,776 differences between those 31, that's just 23 Qurans that she's looked at so far, and she's still finding them on a weekly basis. The next time we have this program, there'll be over 60,000. 60,000, roughly 60,000 variants that she's found already from the Quran that I have right here, from this Quran that is considered to be one and only, the essential eternal Quran. Now, Tony, hearing all that, this is the first time you've heard this. This is the first time most everybody that's listening to this program has heard this. What is your reaction when you hear that?
As I've said before, if Christianity is true, which we have all the evidence in the world for, well, then every man-made religion is automatically false. One of those, of course, is Islam. And if the traditional story of Islam is incorrect, well, then all of the details that we've been giving people in these 6 weeks so far, and of course, a lot of other work that you've done, is filling in those gaps of what really happened. That's all that it's doing. I mean, this isn't a surprise, like, oh, I guess Islam's false now. I mean, we already know that it's false. But this right here is letting people know how unreliable the Quran actually is. And hopefully you were able to see those numbers much clearer now, because if you, in case you hadn't heard, we're actually recording in high definition now. That's 3 times as many pixels as before. Before we were about 480 pixels per square inch. Now we're up to 1,080. So everyone should be able to read that much, much clearer. And in case you want to get on Dr. Smith's mailing list to get these PDFs each week, just contact him or contact Trinity Channel, and we'll pass that information on to him. We do need to take a short break at this time. We want to thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you are seeing things much clearer, at least 3 times clearer than you were before, at least in the recordings if you're watching this off of YouTube. But we thank you so much again for tuning in, for letting people know about this historical critique series, which is a lot of vital information that people need to know about. Again, Christian, Muslim, and everyone else as well. So please stay right where you are. We'll be back in just a few minutes with more Colliding Worldviews.
Now in the palm of your hand is the updated ABN SAD app. So you can now watch all of the programs, shows, and channels in different languages. You can download the app in the App Store related to your device. Once downloaded, you will see 6 different categories within the ABN SAT app. The first category being the English category, which includes 18 different channels. The Arabic category includes 31 channels. The Worship category has 5 channels. The Discipleship category includes 5 channels as well. For more information, please call the numbers on your screen or visit our website at trinitychannel.com.
As it is ABN's mission to go and make disciples of all nations, our discipleship program has spread to several different languages.
Eski şeyler geçti ve her şey yepyeni oldu değerli kardeşlerim.
Reach out to them. He wants you to break up of every division.
تساءل يا رب ماذا تريد أن أفعل؟
مقدس چرا درباره ایمان مسیحی چی صحبت میکنه؟
Khi đi đến đó để mà một cái gọi là
olup İsa Mesih ile yürümedikten sonra
Any man be in Christ, he is a new creature.
كم من مدمنين توقفوا عن الإدمان.
خواهم بود نه خواهم آمد. خواهم بود یعنی هست.
Khi bà trở lại Việt Nam thì thường thì bà nói rằng
Kötü alışkanlıkların, şeytana olan hizmetin, günaha olan düşüklük.
We started out with these languages, but coming soon are even more. Stay tuned to see these programs come to ABN.
Trinity Channel is now airing live 24/7 on our YouTube channel. Apologetics, debates, and discipling are now constantly streaming for all of our YouTube viewers. Be sure to comment on, like, and share our stream to support Trinity Channel's efforts to disciple all nations. Watch live on YouTube today.
Hello Hello, friends. Welcome back to ABN's Training Channel for another episode of Colliding Worldviews. Again, this is number 6 of 7 in this end-of-the-year special 7-week historical critique series with Dr. J. Smith. We've had a lot of great shows. If you haven't seen those, again, go to YouTube, to either the Training Channel's YouTube channel or Dr. Smith's Fander Films, P-F-A-N-D-E-R, or my Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/Tony Goulet. But we thank you so much for your prayers and support, which allow this show to continue to stream online and through satellite throughout the world every single week, along with our other weekly shows, including Rasha Christie's Truth Matters on Mondays, Pastor Joseph's The Cross and the Crescent on Tuesdays, and Islam and the News every single Friday, your Islamic news source. Please tune in for all of those other weekly shows as well. But right now, we are back with Colliding Worldviews and asking, why have we found 31 different Arabic Quran so far, not just Quran translations. You can easily find 31 translations out there. Why have we found 31 different Arabic Qurans? And before the break, Dr. Smith gave us a timeline of many different translators, the different cities that they were sent to, all the different errors. And again, you should be able to see those very clearly now, at least 3 times clearer than before. But we're so thankful to have you back with us and Dr. Smith as well.
Okay, just to correct one thing, these were not 31 different translators. These were recitators who made their own recitation. What do we mean by that? Well, let's go to slide number 20. Slide number 20, we look at what we mean by razm. This is where Muslims are not paying attention. And the vast majority of the Muslims who are criticizing us don't know Arabic very well. I'm not saying that I'm a authority on Arabic, but anybody who's had Arabic 101 will know that the archaic Arabic looks like the slide you see on your screen there. This is basically a consonantal text. You can see it's just lots of letters, but there's no dots above it. There's no dots below it. There's no little curly cues above it or curly cues below it or a single line. And that, no, what we call the fatha, the dhamma, and the kasra, the vowels. When we go to slide number 21, you will see another example of the razm. There you can see a 8th century. Notice there's no diacritical marks, no dots above and below lines, and no vowelization. Let's go to the next slide, number 22. Here is, according to tradition, Ali's Quran. Still no diacritical marks and no dots. So there's no way of knowing. There was no way of any of these earliest manuscripts of knowing any dialectic differences. So this whole idea that these are just dialectic differences, these are just different ways of saying the same word. We're not even dealing with saying the same words. We're looking at basically consonantal text. Let's go to the next slide. Here, slide number 23, because here you have the Topkapi, the very famous Topkapi manuscript from mid-8th century, 749. Now you notice there are some dots appearing in the red. Look at those dots in red, supporting the notion that these were added at a later date. That's why they were put in red in a completely different color. So they're starting to appear in the 8th century. But again, there's no standard form yet. This hadn't been standardized. Now let's look at slide number 24, because here's where it is. Take a look at these 28 letters in slide number 24. Those are the 28 Arabic letters. But when you get to slide number 29, 6 of them are unique. Look at slide number 29 and you will see, and you see those yellow circles. Those yellow circles are the unique letters. That means they always stay the same. Those 6 letters, the Aleph, the Waw, the Ha, the Mim, the Lam, and the Kaf. Those 6 letters always stay the same. They never change. The other 22 change depending on whether you put dots above and below the line. Now, some would say the Ya on the far left corner at bottom would also be changed. But these basically are the 6 unique letters. All the other letters need to have dots above and below to know which ones you're talking about. So, for instance, look at slide number 26 now, the next slide. If you look at 3 letters that you see on the screen there, those 3 letters, when we add dots and vowels above and below the line, we can produce 19 different words. Take a look at the next slide, and you will see what I'm talking about. Slide number 27. You can, if depending on where you put the dots, you can get house, it sprouted, stayed over, a girl, daughter, she built, stood firm, grew, we repent, he repents, she repents. Why? Because either if you put 1 dot above it, it becomes a na. 2 dots, it becomes a ta. 3 dots, it becomes a tha. 1 dot below becomes a ba. 2 dots below becomes a ya. It could be na, ta, tha, ba, ya. 5 different variations of dots just with that little smiley face. And if you have 3 of them next to each other, you can get 19 different words. So if these change the meanings of the word, then they also change the meaning of the sentences, and it can affect the subsequent theology as well. That's why diacritical marks and vowels are absolutely important to understand the text. So when Muslims say, oh, it doesn't change anything if you have a dot above and below the line, who cares if there's no dots there? We know what the meaning is, that this is nothing more than dialectic. We've already destroyed that idea of dialectic because there were no dialectic differences in a consonantal text in the 7th century. Throw that out. And even the modern day Qurans, the ones that we buy today, these 31 that Hatun's been able to procure, look and see how they change the meaning. We're going to do that. And what we want to do is we want to get into some of these differences. Now, before we do that, I just want to show you the names of all these different. So if you go to slide number 31, slide number 31, there are the names of the ones that we saw on that graph that we saw earlier. And just look at the name, Hafs al-Susi, Hafs versus Abi Ja'far, and Yaqub, and al-Duri, and al-Basri, and al-Ammar, and Ashir, and Khalid, and al-Duri again, and Jamaz, and Wardan. I mean, the names just come, they just drip out of your mouth. They're beautiful names, but these are all different reciters. And take a look at the numbers after each one of their names. Each one of those numbers delineates how many differences they have in their recitation, not translation. We're not talking about translation, but their recitation versus this Quran that I have in my hand today, versus Hafs, who died in 805. Let's look at some of those variants. Now, remember, before we look at those variants, I want to go to slide number 34 again so you can see what we're talking about. Remind ourselves what we're referring to. In fact, let's go to the slide before it, number 33. These are the books that we're going to look at. These are the 31 books. There's only 26 on the screen right there because this was taken before we found another 5. But those are the 26 we're going to look at first of all. Now there's another 5 on top of it. Now slide number 34. Those are the names of the different reciters, the different renditions. And let's go now to the first one, slide number 35. And this is the one that every Muslim throws up as, this is all they're talking about. They always, if you go up on any television show, if you go up on any internet site, they always show this example. And this is all that the problem is. What's Mr. Smith talking about? What's Hatun Tash talking about? They're just playing into a trap. They're only talking about the difference between Maliki and Maliki. So in the Hafs version, which is the Quran that we have here, the 805 version, that is Maliki with an Aleph. I don't. Those of you who don't understand Arab, we've circled in the red there to show you where the Aleph is. You can see it. It goes straight up and down. When you get to the Warsh version, Warsh is probably the most popular after Hafs. Warsh is used all over North Africa. So even this idea that Hafs is the only one that's out there, even today, Warsh is very popular in North Africa. In Yemen, I'm sorry, not Yemen, in North Africa, in places like Libya and Tunisia, and certainly in Libya. That this one has actually gotten Morocco. So Warsh is very popular in Morocco. And when you look at the Warsh reference in Maliki, it's just a fatha, Maliki. There's no aleph there. So how does that change the meaning? Well, translation, the only owner of the day is what Maliki with the aleph says. If you just have the fatha, it's the king of the day of recompense. So whether it's the owner or which the king, it means the same thing. That's all that ahruf does. Now, on face value, that does seem like it's not that very important. It's not that very big. Who cares whether you are the king or the owner? If you're a king or your owner, you are in charge. So therefore, that's all that this does. That's not all that it does. Let's start now with number 37. Let's look at number 37. Slide number 37. There you have Surah 2, Ayah 10. There in Hafs is Yaksibuda. Over in Warsh, it's Yukazibuna. Now Yaksibuda, and I've circled the you can see the fatha there in red, and then over in the Warsh, I've circled the Dhamma. Yukazibuna, and also there is a fatha above the kaf. you can see there that this changes the word quite a difference. Yaksibu. Now let's just read the verse. In their hearts is a disease, and Allah increases their diseases. A painful doom is theirs because they lie. That's what it says in the Hafs. In the Warsh, it says, in their heart is a disease, and Allah increases their disease. A painful doom is theirs because they accuse others of lying. Now, does that change the meaning? Absolutely, it does. Are they doomed because they lie, or because they accuse others of lying? There's the question we're asking. Can you then understand why we're even bringing this up? That changes who is the author of this. Let's go to slide number 44. When you look at slide number 44, you have Surah 2, Ayah 251. On the left, you have dafu, which means repelling. Now, if the translation is, and were it not for Allah's repelling some men with others, whereas in the Warsh, it then goes to difa'u. Instead of daf'u, it becomes difa'u, which is, and were it not for Allah's defending some men with others. So, did Allah repel some men, or did Allah defend against men? What action did Allah use? Repelling, which is offensive, or defending, which is defensive? Can you see how this changes the theology? Take a look at the next slide, slide number 45. Here you have Surah, or chapter 2, verse 271. And you have on the Haf, you have yukaferu, and then on the Warsh, you have nukaferu. So it's yukafru versus nukafru. In one case, it has 2 dots below the line. In the other case, it has 1 dot above the line, which changes the meaning completely. When you have yukafru, it says, and he will remove and expiate from you some of your misdeeds. If you have nukafru, and we will remove. Hold on a minute. Who is he and who is it we? Is it third person singular or is it first person plural? Does Allah remove our misdeeds, or do we remove our misdeeds? Can we either is Allah is plural, or humans who are plural, do we? What is reserved for Allah alone? Now, if it's we remove or we will remove, that seems to me that this is something we do ourselves. Theologically speaking, that means that we can work off our own salvation according to the Wash. Whereas he, I hope that that's God, because that means he would be one. I assume that that's what the Hafs say. So here's a theological, this would cause a huge theological debate if they wanted to bring this into the public sphere. Let's go now to slide number 49. I'm skipping a lot of the slides because we have 70 of these up here that we could use. Out of the 59,000, I've just taken about 70 because I didn't have time. Plus, we wouldn't have time in this 1-hour show to do all 59,000. Let's look at Surah 3, Ayah 146 in slide number 49. In slide number 49, chapter 3, verse 146, it says, and how many a prophet fought with whom were many worshippers of the Lord? Qatala. Fought. That's the word. Qatala. Now, on the Warsh, it is, and how many prophets were killed? There it's kutila. From qatala in Hafs, it's changed to kutila in Warsh, which means you either fight or you were killed. Now, did the prophets simply fight, or were they killed? Now, if I were a prophet, I would rather fight than be killed, as the former survives. I'd like to survive. So depending on which version I'm looking at, it really kills me or destroys me. So you can see that is hugely significant, at least for the poor prophets who have to then either be killed or at least survive, depending on the translation. Let's now go to slide number 51. And here we get to Surah 7, Ayah 57. The difference in Hafs has Ariya, Bushra. Whereas in now listen, we're not going to the Warsh. Now we're going to another. We'll just give you some other examples. I want to get one here is not Warsh. The Alayt ibn Khalid. Al-Ri Nashra is what is changed. Now that changes completely the whole meaning of the verse. In Hafs, it's translated, and he it is who sends forth the winds bearing good news before his mercy. In the Alayt ibn Khalid version, it says, and he it is who sends forth the wind as scatterers. So does the wind bear good news, or does it scatter rain clouds? Hugely different. What is the wind there for? I would suggest Alayt ibn Khalid is probably more correct. And I would say the Hafs is incorrect. It seems either the wind has 2 completely different functions here, either to bear good news or to scatter. I'd like to know which is the true one. Now let's jump down to slide number 56. When we get to slide number 56, here we get to Surah Ayah 10, chapter 10, verse 2. Surah 10, verse 2. In the Hafs, you have lasahirun. You have the dagat aleph is now introduced. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, this is something that's very technical. For those who understand Arabic, you know exactly why this is important. A dagat aleph is used, or it's taken away. This on the water side, it has no dagat aleph. So the translation then has, have the people been amassed that we revealed revelation to a man from among them, but the disbelievers say, indeed, this is surely a magician. That's what the dagat aleph. If you take the dagat aleph off, it then becomes, indeed, this is surely a work of magic. So is the revelation to a man the work of a magician or the work of magic? There's confusion here concerning whether it's a man or an action happening at this time. And you can see why we're bringing this up. This is not insignificant. This does not mean that it's just a dialectic difference. This changes the whole context of the verse. Let's jump to slide number 62. In slide number 62, you have ibadana. Again, the dagat aleph is added, which is added in Hafs, but it's not there in the Al-Bazi translation. Abdana is the word there. So the translation for the Hafs is, and remember our slaves, Ibrahim, Isaac, and Yaqub. So three of them, right? Slaves, plural. In the Al-Bazi, it says, and remember our slaves, singular, Ibrahim, Isaac, and Yaqub. Can you see? Al-Bazi not only gets the translation wrong, changes it, but doesn't understand the difference between plural and singular. He doesn't know how to count, obviously. So it's obvious that Al-Bazi has not only changed the context, he has changed the grammar. And you can't do this. You're not supposed to be able to do this if this is from God and eternal. Let's go to the next slide, slide number 63. Okay, on the left side, you have the ibadu. That's the Hafs. And the word for ibadu is slaves. So, and they make the angels who are slaves of the beneficent females. So the slaves are made females. In the Ra translation or recitation, you have inda. So it's a completely different word, which then translates as, and they make the angels who are in the presence of the beneficent females. Now, can you see if you're a slave, if you're an angel reading this, you'd want to know what you are. Are you a slave or are you in the presence of the beneficent? I'd like to know if I'm an angel. Is it the slaves or those in Allah's presence who will be made females? If I were an angel, I would prefer being in God's presence than being a slave. And also, if I were an angel, I would prefer it only if only the slaves were made females. Thank you. So you can see why this has huge significance. Go to the next slide, slide number 64. We're at Surah 46, ayah 15. Now here you have the Hafs, it's Isana. Again, there's the dagat aleph introduced at that time. And we have enjoined on man doing good to his parents. Whereas Al-Duri, remember that Al-Duri who kept on confusing himself and coming up with different recitations, he has husnan instead of isanan, and he has husnan, which means beauty. So his translation reads, and we have enjoined on man beauty to his parents. Now, are men supposed to do good or be beautiful to their parents? As a parent, and I am a parent, I would prefer that my son be good rather than be just good looking. Let's go to slide number 67. Slide number 67 is referring to Surah 98, verse 6. The Hafs al-Barayati, which is creatures. The Warsh is al-Barayati, which is the innocent. So when you read the verse, it says, indeed, they were who disbelieved among the people of the scripture, and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell, abiding eternally therein. Those are the worst of creatures, according to Hafs. On the watch side, it says, indeed, they will be disbelieved among the people of the scripture, and the polytheists will be in the fire of hell, abiding eternally therein. Those are the worst of the innocent. Now stop and scratch your head here a minute. Hold on a minute. Are we Christians the worst creatures, or are we innocent? I'd like to know as a Christian. This has an awful lot to do with me as a Christian reading this. Are we nothing but creatures abiding in hell, or are we innocent? And if we are innocent Christians and Jews and polytheists, what are we doing in hell? So either way, you can see it's a problem. Not only is it a problem in translation, it changes the whole context of that verse, and it changes the meaning. Hugely significant. And I hope you're seeing, Tony, that this changes completely. Now let's look at a review. And I know we're coming down. We need to review this all. Let's look at slide number 68, and let's remember what we've now claimed in front of us. Remember, we said at the very beginning, Tony, that Mohamed perfectly memorized the Quran, and he passed it down in its complete form. between 610 and 632. He made his followers to memorize parts of it. No editing, no canceling, according to what Muslims tell us. And that's why they say there has never ever been more than one Quran. And that's why all Qurans today are identical. There are no differences. That's why it is perfectly preserved. This is what they say. These are their claims. Slide number 69. However, when we go to slide number 69, we find a number of problems. From the 8th to 9th century, we find different readings begin to appear. We saw this already. We saw this from our first lecture that we did 6 weeks ago. No one today seems to know or define what this ahruf is and this kirat is. They say that there are synonyms. They do not change the meanings, yet we found that they do change the meaning substantially from the examples that we've seen today. Now, we've only showed you about 6 or 7, maybe 10 different examples. Tony, before we go any further, just process what you have seen. Come back to me and tell me, does this bother you? And should it bother those of the people who are watching?
Well, it doesn't bother me personally because I already know Islam's false, but I'm sure it probably is very disturbing to people who think that Islam is true, that the Quran is reliable and all of that. Like I said, this is just filling in those gaps of how this actually came about. Now, the major implications here and the problems that I see, I mean, just thinking about the Islamic worldview versus the Christian worldview, how Muslims look at the Quran versus how Christians look at the Bible. Number one, Christians are more focused on orthodoxy and what is true, whereas Muslims are more focused on orthopraxy or right practice. So they aren't strong on theology. We see a whole lot of theological problems and philosophical problems in the Islamic worldview and theology, and even just the idea of who Allah is. So for Muslims, it's more about following the 5 pillars and just hoping that your good works will outweigh your bad and all of that. If it wasn't that way, if they were focused more on orthodoxy like Christians are, then they probably would have found out a lot of this a long time ago, rather than a lot of Muslims just still blindly following this man-made religion that is all about works righteousness, self-righteous works of trying to earn your way into paradise or earn your way out of hell or whatever else. But also, too,
okay. Now let's back up even before that. True, orthopraxy versus orthodoxy. But the question we're asking today, can you see why this is so important? For Muslims, there's nothing that attaches them with the eternalness of God. There's nothing that attaches them with anything that's divine outside of one book and one man, the book and the man. We've said this many times, the book and the man, the book and the man. That book, therefore, has to be above criticism. That book, therefore, has to be eternal. It has to be exactly the same today that which exists in heaven. Now, can you then understand why, regardless of orthopraxy or orthodoxy, can you understand then why this argument goes right to the heart of everything they believe? That's why Muslims have for so many years, and they've done this for so long, for so many years, Muslims have said categorically, and especially coming up today, especially in today's world, have always said that in order to really know whether this book, the Quran, is the word of God, the true word of God, whether this book is eternal, whether this book has always existed, whether it was sent down to a man named Mohammed, whether for 32 years it was retained in its codified form and then finally written down at the time of Uthman, there's no other way they can find, there's no other thing they can go to but this book to show that Islam in every one of its categories is not only authoritative, but is superior to any other book, including this book here. And they have made many claims that this book is been corrupted. This book has been changed. The Bible has been corrupted. It's been created. It's been deleted. It's been changed. It's been manipulated. And that's why we cannot trust this book. We can only trust this book because there is no corruption. There is no change. It has always been the same, regardless of where you go in the world. Doesn't matter what Quran you look at. Every Quran is the same as that was written down by Uthman, as that was revealed by Muhammad, as that is in the eternal tablets. Can you then understand what we're doing today is we're not only saying that this book has been changed over 1,400 years, it's still changed today. These are 31 different Qurans we're looking at. And the names of the men that actually are given for each one of these 31 Qurans, look at the dates that they did their recitations. Look at the dates, and we can go back to that graph again. And if we could just go back, and I'll ask the technician to take us back up to slide, and I'll just give it right here. Let's end with this because we need to look at the slide. Look at slide number 34. If we go back to those names, just look at every one of those names. Every one of those names created these recitations that were different in the 9th century. So that's over 1,000 years ago. For 1,000 years, Muslims have known that these recitations exist. This is nothing new. This is not something that we've just heard yesterday, that's just been invented in the last century or in the last 10 years. This has been around for over 1,000 years. We're talking about the 9th century. We're now in the 21st century. So we're talking about over 1,000 years ago. Why has Islam, why have the Muslim clerics, why have the Muslim scholars not admitted this? Why have they never said one iota about this? Why have we not heard these names before? Why is it we have to put this graph up there and show the whole world that we're not just talking about one Quran, we're talking about 31 different Arabic Qurans. Every one of them has been around since the 9th century for over 1,000 years. These names are well known. And every one of these reciters had differences, had hundreds, did I say hundreds? Thousands of differences. I mean, just look at some of the differences you have there. Al-Harith had 5,000 differences between his recitation and Hafs' recitation, this one that I have in my hand. And when Hatun Tash has gone through in just the last 2 years, has already found almost 60,000 differences between these Qurans and the Quran that is used and has been put out by Al-Azhar University in 1924. That Al-Azhar University, this one here, but hold on a minute, I'm going to give you put another spanner in the works. When Al-Azhar University and those scholars in 1924 came up with their final recension, they call it the Hafs Quran, and we know today as the Hafs Quran. Where is Hafs' manuscript? And we're going to end with this. Where is Hafs' manuscript? Where is there any manuscript that is, we can say, is Hafs' manuscript? So what manuscript are they attributing it to? We don't have an original manuscript of Hafs. We only have these scholars who in 1924 attributed it back, redacted it back to a man named Hafs, but we have nothing to prove that he even gave us that which they finally came to as their final one. And why didn't they use any of the other 30 to 31 other? There's going to be 36 of them. When we find all of them, there'll be about 37 that we now know exist today. What about the other 36? Why did those scholars in Al-Azhar choose only Hafs? Why didn't they choose Al-Duri, or Khalif, or Khalum, or Warsh, especially Warsh, since his was so popular in North Africa? And why have Muslims not admitted it today? And then lastly, why is it when we now look at these differences, and we've just shown you 10 of them already on the screen, in every case, they not only change the text, they change the meaning. These are not just superfluous. These do not just support a notion that these are nothing more than dialectic differences or different readings. They change the ahruf. They change the consonantal text. And that's why we need to ask this, and that's why Muslims need to be careful of the claims they make. Thank God we don't have that problem with the Bible. Thank God we don't make these claims. Thank God we don't have to find a book that is eternal. We would never make the claim that it's eternal or that it was sent down. Complete, yes. Change, we know where the changes are. We're very clear. We know where those verses are. We warn the readers at the end of chapter 16 of Mark, verse 9, book of Mark, verse 9 to 20. We warn the readers that these are not found in the earliest Greek manuscripts. John chapter 7, verse 53 to John chapter 8, verse 11. Those verses are not found in the earliest Greek manuscripts. We're honest. We're transparent. We tell the world because these are written by men, and men can make mistakes. They can be added to. But we know where those changes are because of the fact we've done our homework.
And the big problem
Muslims need to come clean.
The big problem is that this all goes back to the actual claims about the Quran. And again, the theology, Dr. Smith, as you've shown, these variants not only change the theology of what the book actually says, but we need to think about the theology that this is actually an eternal book to begin with, that this was supposedly sent down from a perfect God, Allah, who was supposedly, if Allah exists, or the idea of who Allah is the one true God, well, the Yahweh of the Bible is false. And all of a sudden, we have to import ourselves into this this false worldview of these claims that this is an eternal book, which is perfect, has never been changed. And of course, no one is going to mention any of the things that you brought up. They're not going to mention all these different reciters and everybody else, or make a big deal about it, because the more they do that, the more they are questioning the supposed eternal word of Allah. And what kind of punishment does that bring if you're living under Sharia?
Yeah.
That's why people need to depend on people in the West who aren't living under Sharia to actually do the work, criticize Muhammad, the Quran, the religion of Islam, not because we hate Muslims, but because we love Muslims. We want them to know the truth. But sometimes Muslims realize the truth when they first realize what is actually a lie, and that is the false worldview of Islam. And we want to get the gospel out to the world. Theological problems here, big theological problems. And of course, being the month of December, we are celebrating the true word of God, an eternal person who took on flesh. And that is the eternal word of God in Christianity, where in the Quran, it's a book. In Christianity, it is a person. And we hope that you have a blessed time this month celebrating the incarnation of the Lord Jesus Christ. Dr. Smith, it's been a blessing to have you back once again. I know myself and all of our viewers out there are looking forward to next Monday for part 7 of 7, the last show of this 7-part series. But thank you so much for being on once again today, and for all of this very important information about the 31 Korans. Definitely for being with us. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please stay tuned to this channel for all of our weekly shows. Again, we have Colliding Worldviews and Russia Christie's Truth Matters on Mondays, Pastor Joseph's The Cross and the Crescent on Tuesdays, and Islam and the News every single Friday. Please stay tuned in on your computer, on your Apple, Android, Amazon Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV, the list goes on, whatever device you want to watch on, and also let other people know as well. Again, you can find all of the past shows and this show on ABN's Trinity Channel's YouTube channel, my Vimeo channel, vimeo.com/Tony Gurley, and Fander Films, Pfander Films on YouTube as well. That's Dr. Smith's YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being with us, and God bless you. We will see you next Monday for the last show of the 7-part historical critique series.